Hey, do we have to wait for others to join?
Yes, Adam, we'll wait for another 1 minute.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. In the meantime, I'll just start my machine. Network seems to be very slow. Okay, we are waiting for this another 2-3 minutes. Any questions or doubts from the previous session? Anyone? Any questions? Hey, am I audible to everyone? Okay, any questions or doubts? So far, what we did yesterday, a couple of you had some issues. Were you able to get a new VM? Okay, that's great. All right. I don't know why it's not connecting. No. Hey, I'm not sure, something is not connecting. Just give me 5 minutes. Let me restart my machine and connect back. Hey, I'm just working. Looks like some problem with AWS. I'm not able to reach. Just give me another 2-3 minutes. I'm just trying to get another VM alternative. Yep, thank you. Okay, so just to recap, what we were trying yesterday is to set up master. And in the master, we saw how do we install JDK and then how do we install Jenkins master on that particular machine. And post that, once you log in to the Jenkins using the port 8080, which is the default port, in the beginning, it'll ask you with a default admin account, and then followed by that, you have to install the suggested plugins. And once you complete that, you will be able to log in, wherein this is what we call it as the default or the Jenkins homepage. Okay. So when you try to access Jenkins, the default homepage doesn't have any of the information. So what we have to do is we have to go ahead with different types of configurations that we have on need basis. Then you will be seeing all the options on the Jenkins dashboard. Okay. However, to get started, now, if I quickly go back to what we were discussing. Okay, so in Jenkins, we pretty much have these configurations to be done. So plugins, node configuration, tool, and then system configuration. And post that, you will be doing different types of job configuration. Okay. Now, if there is a need where you want to install a new plugin or you want to upgrade an existing plugin, how do you do? So in that, now in your Jenkins homepage, go to manage Jenkins that you see on the left side. If not, anytime if you click on this, you will also get the same option of manage Jenkins. And in that, we have various options that you want to choose. Now, if you're interested to install a plugin or upgrade a plugin, then under manage Jenkins, go to manage plugins. Okay. Now, when you go to manage plugins, okay, let me just zoom in. Let me know if it is not visible. Okay. So here you can see there are different tabs available, out of which when you go to this installed tab, you will be able to see what are the plugins which is already installed. So you can see there are some plugins already listed. This is because yesterday when we did the suggested plugins installation, all these default plugins has been already installed as part of the suggested plugins list. Okay. Now, other than that, if you want to install a new plugin, then you should go to Available tab. And here, it will show you all the plugins which is available in Jenkins. So another advantage of using Jenkins is it has tons of plugins for different kind of tools and commands that you want to run. So that way, you need to first understand what is that we are going to automate, and corresponding to it, what is the plugin that we need to install. Okay. Now, right now, I don't want you to install anything, but just know what you have to do for installing. Now, let's say later on, I want to install a plugin for GitLab, because the default plugin that comes along with the suggested list is only the Git client. Now, specifically, if I want to connect to GitLab using my Jenkins, then I need to install a plugin. So if you search for GitLab here, so it will give you a list of all the plugins available. Now, right now, assume this is the one that I want. So you can click on this, and you can either go ahead and just install this plugin, or for some plugins, Jenkins needs to be restarted. So in those cases, you can just go ahead and say download now and install after restart, or you can just go ahead and just install the plugin without any restart. But however, remember, only when the plugin is installed, corresponding to this plugin, whatever the options that we want, we will be able to see in the Jenkins later. So that's where the first thing what we have to do is install the plugin. Okay. Now, when I say install a plugin, so let's assume I'll just go ahead and keep this installed without restart. So it will try to show you what is the progress, wherein it will try to connect to the open source location or the open source repo, and it will try to download the plugin. Now, this is already downloaded. In case if you want to restart, once again, you can go ahead and say restart. If not, you can go back to the dashboard. Now, once again, just to show you, go to Manage Jenkins, Manage Plugins, and in this, in the Available tab, you need to choose what plugins that you want to install, and then go ahead and install and restart, or just only install. But the point that you have to remember here is, this tab called Available shows all the plugins which is available on the open source registry of Jenkins. But if your company is behind a proxy server, then by default, when you try to run, Jenkins will not be able to connect to internet directly. So that's where what you have to do is go to this advanced section, and in this, if you have a particular proxy server, then you can give the details of the proxy server so that Jenkins will try to connect to the registry or the public repository using this proxy server. Okay, so this way you can do. If not, the other way what you can do is you can download the Jenkins plugins externally to some machine, and you can directly give the location from where you can upload. So these are the two ways that you can use in case if you are behind a network and you cannot connect to the public registry directly from Jenkins. But if not, try to understand when you use the Available tab, the plugins, whatever that you are seeing, is visible only if Jenkins is able to connect to the open source registry. So as we move forward, if there is a plugin that we want to install, we will just come to this Manage Jenkins, Manage Plugins, and we will go to the Available tab, choose the plugin and install, or install and restart. So this is what we call it as plugin management. Okay. However, what's the next step that we have to do? So once we have the plugins installed, over here, what we are going to do is tools configuration. Okay. Now, corresponding to a plugin that you have installed, you need to give the location of various tools that you're going to install. So as of now, we are not going to have any tool, but as we move forward, I'll show you. But what is that you have to do to the tool configuration? So once again, go to Jenkins. At any point of time, if you click on this here, it will take you to the Jenkins homepage. Now in this, go to manage Jenkins, and here you should see something called as global tool configuration. Okay. Now, any tool that you want Jenkins to be aware of, you need to add the details about that under the tool configuration. But remember, when you are trying to add a machine detail or a tool detail to Jenkins, it is going to be global. So what Jenkins will assume is whatever the tool that you are trying to give, it assumes that that particular tool is available in the master. Okay. So that way, whatever that you give here, it is the same which Jenkins will assume it is on the master as well as on all the other slave. But later on, what we will be doing is we will be adding the tool specific to a machine. That's the reason when you say global tool, you are telling whatever the tool that you are going to refer is for the master, but the same thing will also be applicable to the slave nodes. So first thing we have to do is add the tool globally, and then if there is a machine specific value that you want to change, then you will be changing it later. If not, whatever you apply here, remember, it will be applied to both master as well as all the nodes to which Jenkins will be connecting. Okay. Now, for example, I want to give the location of JDK. Okay. So when I say I want to give the location of JDK, then where is the JDK? Right now, like I said, the location that you're going to give in the global tool will always refer to master, because even though you give the location of a slave node, it will still check whether that is available on the master. Okay. So what we will do, let's try to first connect to this machine, and I'll try to get the JDK details from the master machine. So I'll okay. So here now, if I check which Java, so it says Java is available in this location. However, if I check this, this will be again a symlink to this location, but however, this is again going to be a symlink. So basically, my Java is installed in this location called user lib jvm openjdk. Okay, so if I ls this, you will see, right? So this is my Java home. So what I'm going to do now is, if I go back to Jenkins master, here I'll add the JDK location, wherein it is asking me to give a name. Okay, so I'll just call it as JDK 1.8. Then Jenkins always gives you an option where either you can install and give the details to Jenkins, or Jenkins can automatically install JDK on whatever machine that you want. Now, we don't want to use this to install automatically. Instead, we have installed it, and what is the Java home? And this is where I'm going to give this location. So now, anytime in Jenkins, if you refer to this name called JDK 1.8, internally, it will refer to the Java home. And again, understand, I'm giving this from the master. Okay. Same way, if I want to add the details about a tool called Git, then once again, you can give a name. And again, this option is visible only because we have installed Git as part of the suggested plugin. Like that, if you want the information about GitLab, once you restart this, if you go down, you will be able to see the GitLab option. So that way, any kind of options you want to see, first you need to install the plugin. Okay. So now, for telling the location of Git, you can give some name. Okay. So again, this can be any name that you can identify. And next, it is asking what is the path to Git executable. So this is where, once again, I'm going to master, and in the master, if I just search where is the Git available, it says it is in user bin Git. So give the complete path, okay, including the executable. Okay, so I have just given this location. Now, if there is any other tool later on, if you need, you're going to come to the global tool configuration, and then you're going to add it here. Okay. So that way, once you have added whatever the necessary tools is needed, then you can go ahead and say save. Now in Jenkins, the difference between these two tabs is if you say apply, it will save and it will remain in the same page. Okay. But if you click on save, it will save and come out of this particular page. Okay. So what we did, under the global tool configuration, I added two tools. One is the JDK location and Git location. Now, right now, these two are sufficient. So let's go ahead and say save. Okay. Now, this is the page which you get when you click on Manage Jenkins here. Instead, we were trying to go to Manage Jenkins and come back to this. So whatever the options that you see here is the same what you will be also seeing if you click Manage Jenkins directly. Okay. So remember, going forward, once again, if there is a need for us to set up some tool, we are going to come to Manage Jenkins, global tool configuration, and we are going to give the tool location. But before that, the plugin for that tool must be installed. Okay, so that way, anything common as a tool, you're going to install it first using the plugin and then configure it in the global tool configuration. Okay, now we will just take it one by one. Okay, now what after this? So you have the node and we have the plugin and we have the tool configured, right? Now, before I move to node configuration, let me just quickly check. Can everyone go ahead and set up this tools before it gets confusing with later other things? So anyway, plugin you have already installed, don't do anything. So what I want you to do is connect to your master and try to find out where is the JDK installed. And in case if you have not installed Git, then go ahead and install Git locally using the Windows Git or Linux, and you should be having it. In case if you don't have, then it's also fine. Just specify only JDK location and come back. Can you quickly try it once? So go to Manage Jenkins, Global Tool Configuration, and try to add these two. One is your JDK and the other one is Git. Can you quickly add these two? If you're using Windows like yesterday, then quickly check where is your Java available. That is your JDK home directory somewhere under C drive. So try to copy that and put it as your JDK. And then what is the location of your Git executable? Okay, so that should be under your C downloads or C Windows Git folder. Okay, so in case you're not able to get.
So can you ls that JDK Java wala part on your master machine?
Sorry, come again.
Can you ls that part? Can you list that part of on your master machine?
Sure.
Because mine was mine is different, sir. It's user lib jvm java jre bin java like that.
Yeah, you're pointing to JRE. That's what. So you see, when you install the OpenJDK, it gives you both JRE and because JDK has both. So that's the reason I'm not referring to JRE. Instead, I'm referring to the home directory because in this, it will point to this bin location, not the JRE. But it doesn't matter even if you specify the bin. That's
Your voice is not audible, sir. Your voice is breaking very much.
Now I'm saying the home directory is the folder location on the top of where you find bin lib folder. Okay. So either if you are using JRE folder, then give it until here. Okay. This should be your home directory, not under the bin. Okay. Anything in the top folder where you have bin is called as the home directory. So you can either give this or what I have given is I have not gone inside this. Instead of that, on the top level itself, I'm giving this as my home directory. So in simple, wherever you find bin lib folder, that folder is called as your Java home directory. Okay, so you take that. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Others, let me know if you're able to do it. Able to add?
So it's showing me error, but perhaps it exists on some agent like that. Is not a directory on Jenkins master.
Can you share the screen?
So I have connected from my phone, sir. That's the issue.
Okay. Which error? I mean, while adding this, it is trying to show you some error.
Yes, sir. After adding, it's showing me I have added the path till Java 1.80 OpenJDK. is not a directory on the Jenkins master, but perhaps it exists on some agent.
I think you have
So
put
can you cross
backslash
check
at
once
the end.
again? Is that
After
doesn't
AM364, you have to remove the slash, then it will work for you.
There is no slash
just
after
check.
that.
No, that's what, it's okay, but just cross check once. I mean, you can ignore that message, it doesn't matter. Like I said, by default, what Jenkins will think is it should be available on the master. Okay, suppose if it is not there, that's where I said the same value will be available. Okay, but still, for now it doesn't matter. But just make sure that you have given exactly the same. So cross check, copy that, go to your Explorer and just try to see whether you are able to access that folder. Then you will know whether what you're doing is correct or not. Okay. And for others, are you able to do this? Okay. Fine. Okay, and everyone has done. Okay, so now I think the next question that I have is, do you guys have now another machine created to add a slave machine? How many of you have two machines with you, which you can use one as master, the other one as slave? Hello. Guys, please answer questions, because if you keep silent, it will be very difficult for understanding like what you guys are knowing. Okay. Again, if it's not interactive, it will be very difficult. It will be just one way. So I appreciate whether it is yes or no, please unmute yourself and give an answer, or at least put it in the chat. Okay. Okay, so if you're trying to connect from one machine to the other machine, you should have the ability to do SSH between two machines. Okay. So Hemal, when you say you have your colleague's machine, what is he using? Is that a Windows machine or a Linux box? Can you do a connection from your machine to his machine through a network? But right now, when you're installing Jenkins, if you're not in VPN, that connection will not work, right? So that is where I was asking, do you have two machines which you guys can use without using your VPN? If you have two VMs, then it will be easy for you to take one as master, the other one as the slave, and you can use the Jenkins master to connect. Okay, I think only one person said you have. Okay, so Vijay Raj, so you have two VMs with you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. And both of them are Linux box?
Yes, both are Linux.
Okay, sure. Fine. So for those who don't have the node, it doesn't matter. Okay, you can use your master itself to act as both the master and slave, because yesterday I told you, if you do not give any machine, Jenkins will try to run everything on the master itself. But however, if you get a machine, how is that you're going to connect as a slave? So that's what I'm going to show you first. Okay. Now, before we proceed to that, what we need to know is, if you take a machine, now from master, if I'm going to have a Linux box, Jenkins is going to connect using SSH. Okay, so that's the reason. So what we will do, instead of giving a password, we'll try to set up a passwordless SSH between the master and Jenkins, and use that public key to share it with the Jenkins, so that Jenkins can connect to the slave using the same public key, whatever we are going to have. Okay, so for that, what we will do now is, first let's go to the slave machine and try to generate a SSH key. Okay, I think this is what I had already shared with you, but what we will do now, let me go back to my AWS account. Okay, so this is master, and I have one more machine, which is slave. Let me also connect to it. Okay, so here, what we will do is, let me open another command prompt to connect to the slave.
Sir, should the slave be of GUI or it can be without GUI? Minimal installation can be done.
Yeah, minimum can be done. You don't need GUI because all you need is SSH, right? Just like what I'm doing now. In my AWS, I don't have GUI, so I just use the SSH console to connect. Okay. So I have two machines. So this is the master, and the other one is the slave. And in both of them, can you guys mute, please? So now on both of them, can you go on mute, please? Now, one thing what you need to make sure is, when we are trying to set up a passwordless SSH between two machines, on both the machine, the same user account should be available. And since I have created the machine using AWS, it gives you a dummy account called Ubuntu. So on both the master and on the slave, you can see I have the same user. So what I can do, I can generate a SSH key from master and copy that to the slave. All right. So for that, what I'm going to do is, on the master, you are going to do a SSH key generation. So in the master, you go ahead and run SSH keygen -t RSA. Okay, and this will generate a public and private key on the master for Ubuntu user in my case. So in the same way, now whatever the user that you have on master as a default user, now try to run this. Looks like it disconnected. Okay, so I've just connected back. So here, I'll just run this, and when you run this, it will be asking you for some default values. So don't put anything, just keep pressing enter. Okay, now once it is completed, on the home directory of this user called Ubuntu, you should be seeing a .ssh folder. Okay, so if I go inside home directory .ssh, you should see a public key and a private key. So id rsa.pub is the public key, id rsa is the private key. Okay, so what you should do now is, from the master machine, take the public key. Okay, so that is here. What I want you to do is take the content of the home directory dot ssh and id underscore rsa dot pub, okay, from master. And this you have to put it into the slave machine. So I'll take this. So basically just do a cat and you will get this. Now take this and go to your slave machine. Now in the slave machine, find out whether there is a file called authorized keys available under .ssh. So this is my slave machine, and in that, if I go to .ssh folder, and in this check whether you have a file called authorized key. Suppose if it is not there, then create this .ssh folder and create this file and edit this, okay, and copy paste whatever that you have just took from the master, okay. But remember, if there is something already available, don't tamper it, then append. So right now there is already some key. On top of that, I'm adding this key. Now once it is done, okay, so this is my IP of the slave machine, okay. Now if I go to master, and let me just clear the screen on master. So from master, if I say SSH Ubuntu @ the IP of the slave machine, then without asking password, now you can see we have connected to the slave machine. So this way, what we have first done is setting up a passwordless connection between the master and slave, okay. Now, once this is done, we will use the same key for Jenkins to connect to the slave machine, okay. So that is where we haven't done the node configuration yet. Now, to do the node configuration, what we have to do is first go back to your Jenkins, that is your master. The same way, manage Jenkins and manage node. Okay, so let me go back to this first. So in the manage Jenkins, you should see this option called manage node. So click on this. So if you look at this, there is already a machine added as a slave. This is where yesterday I was telling you, if you do not tell Jenkins on which machine to run, the master machine itself will be utilized to run. So that's where by default, your master is also considered as a slave machine. But in real time, you should avoid using this machine. That is because if you try running certain tasks directly on the master machine where Jenkins is running, then there will be too much of load on Jenkins and performance will come down. So that is where for every task that you are going to perform, you will connect to a different remote machine. So that's where now for us, we have one remote machine. So go ahead and click on new node, and over here, give some node name. Now I'll call this as build machine 1. Okay. Now mark this as a permanent agent and then click OK. Now pay attention here. Going forward, whenever I say Jenkins connect to build machine 1, then it needs to know the configuration details. Based on that, Jenkins will connect. So that's when there are some configurations that we have to do for the node, in which the first one is number of executors. Okay. So what do you mean by number of executors? So whenever Jenkins connects to a particular machine, how many parallel job or parallel task can it run on any given machine? That is what we call it as executors. Okay. So executor is nothing but how many parallel thread or job that Jenkins can run on this particular machine. Now, how do you decide on the number of threads or number of executors? So that goes back to what is the capacity available in this machine, and for you to run a particular job or a task, what is the resource that you need? For example, if I take a machine which has 4 GB of RAM, just an assumption, and I'm trying to run a job, and that job will take 1 GB of RAM. Okay, then how many such jobs can run on this machine in parallel? Anyone? So I have a machine of 4 GB RAM, and I want to run one job or a task which takes 1 GB to run. So how many such jobs or a task can I run parallelly in the machine?
But even if we have 4 GB RAM, some of the RAM will be taken for the OS itself, right? So considering that, we need to take the remaining memory into consideration, right? So we not for a rough answer, we can say 4 parallel tasks. But if the OS is taking such memory of 1 GB or 2 GB, the remaining memory only can be used for the jobs, right?
Yes, I never told you what is it. I'm just asking you how many things do you think you can run in parallel? So that's where, if logically, if you see out of 4 GB, 4 GB cannot be utilized, there will be something already running. So consider if you have something around 3 GB left, then I can run 3 parallel tasks. Or if on my machine only for executing, if 2 GB is available, you can run 2 parallel tasks to calculate, right? Which is what exactly you're trying to say. So that way, now, if I take this machine and if I'm going to run, so probably on a safer side, I can say 2 executors to run 2 parallel tasks. To the max, I can say 3 executors. Okay. Same way, if I have a machine of 8 GB RAM and the same kind of task, if I want to run, how many can I run? Then probably I can run safely 6 parallel executors or parallel tasks. To the max, I can run 7 tasks or 7 executors. So that's how you will be deciding on the number of executors. Okay. So the number of executors depends on what is the capacity you have in the machine and what type of job that you are going to run and what is the capacity needed for that job to run. But ideally, when you set a executor, Jenkins doesn't care about what is the resource utilization. So it is like a queue. So Jenkins will say, okay, this machine has 2 executors. No matter what kind of job, if 2 jobs try to run in parallel, it will allow. So that's how the maximum parallel jobs that Jenkins can run on one single machine is what we call it as executor. Okay. So every machine you are going to need that. Okay. Now, what happens if you have a machine and it has an executor of 2, but at a time we are trying to run 3 jobs in it? Then it will go to a queue system in which the machine has only 2 executors. So Jenkins will use that 2 threads and it will be running 2 jobs. And the 3rd job will be in queue. So only when any one of the executor is free, then Jenkins will allocate the 3rd waiting job to that thread or to that executor, and then the job will be executed on that machine. So that way, at a time, Jenkins can run only the available executors in parallel, and any more jobs which wants to run on the same machine will be in queue. Okay. Now, that's the same concept which Jenkins will be also using in the group. So let's say, for example, I have 2 machines and each machine has one thread. Now, when I'm running a job, I will tell the machine to, or I will tell the Jenkins to pick this group. Now, assume for some reason, if one machine is down, actually it is not the machine which Jenkins bothers about, but the executor. So when the machine itself is not available, there is no executor available. So there is only one executor altogether available in the group, which is there in this machine. So that's how it will go and pick this machine. Same way, if this machine is available, but still there is some other job running on that, then the executor is not free. Then Jenkins will check in the group which machine has at least one executor to allow your current job to run. So that's where Jenkins associates with the executor related to that job and it will be running. And in case if it doesn't find any executors available at that time in the machine or in the group, then Jenkins will be in queue and it will wait until it is available. And only when it is free, then it will start picking up an executor and run on that machine. If not, remember Jenkins will be in queue. Okay, so that's where now, if you go back, this is what that once again, executor is nothing but how many jobs can you run parallel in this machine. Okay, but if the question now comes, how many jobs can you run on master? How do you answer that? Let's take this example, the diagram. Okay, now assume I have 3 machines and all the machine has one executor. Okay, so my question now is, how many jobs can I run on machine? Or question simple, how many jobs can my Jenkins master execute?
Adam, you are not audible. Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, but in meanwhile, it is getting disconnected.
Question is, you take this diagram. Now, if I say I have 3 machines and each one of them has one executor. Now, if I take this machine, how many jobs can you run at any time? 1. If I take this machine, I can run 1. If I take this, I can run 1. But now my question is, how many jobs can you run from your master at any time?
Three.
Okay, any other answers?
Depends on the number of executors.
Sorry?
Depends on the number of executors, how much executors are present. We have configured for that slave.
Hey, your voice is not audible. Can you come again, please?
Sir, it depends upon the number of executors that we have configured for that slave.
Yeah, so this is where what you have to understand is, if Jenkins has to run on the slave, it depends on how many machines you have and how many executors you have, that many jobs Jenkins can run. Tomorrow, if I add one more machine like this, then how many jobs can Jenkins run? Jenkins can run 4 jobs. But you also have to understand, Jenkins can run a job on master itself directly. This is what I told you, right? Because if you have not given any machine, then Jenkins can run it on the same machine. Then how many jobs can it run? So that's where how many jobs can be run on master depends on two factors. One is how many total machines we have and what is the sum of executors on all these machines at that point of time. Plus, if you want Jenkins to run something on the master, then what is the capacity of the master? So based on that, you are going to tell how many jobs can you run on master. If not, there is no limit on the master. Okay, it all depends on how many slaves you have, and in that, how many executors you have. Plus, if you are choosing something to run on the master itself, then what's the capacity of the master and what is the number of executors on the master? You can choose that also. So that's how the difference between how many jobs you can run on a slave versus how many jobs can you trigger or execute from the master. Okay, clear on that?
Can you please come again? Your voice was not that much audible, sir.
Now, which part didn't you understand?
That master wala part.
Okay, so just like how you have the slave, master also has number of executors, which we didn't see. I'll show you. So that way, how many jobs can you run on the Jenkins master depends on two factors. One is what is the total number of machines you have as the slave and what is the number of executors that you have put together. Plus, if you are using the master itself to run some job, then what is the capacity or how many executors available in the master? So all together is what you can say how many jobs you can run in Jenkins. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, right now I'm leaving it to 1. Now let's come to the next point called remote root directory. Okay. So what is this remote root directory? So what we have to understand here is when you run Jenkins, Jenkins connects to the slave machine and it will be executing whatever the application or command or script that you give. Okay. But where does it run in that machine? For example, if I ask Jenkins, Jenkins, can you please copy a file to this machine? So where will Jenkins copy the file? Same way, if I'm asking you, I give you a Linux machine and I'm asking you, can you please copy the file to a machine? Where will you copy? So you need to know the location, which is nothing but the file system location. Okay, that's where whenever Jenkins connects to a machine, Jenkins needs a separate folder in which it will be executing all the commands or tasks or script, whatever that you give to Jenkins. Okay, and that folder is what we call it as remote root directory. Okay, so now when Jenkins is going to connect to my machine called build machine 1, I want Jenkins to go to a particular folder in this machine and then run all the tasks. So remember, by default, whatever the folder that you're going to give here under remote root directory is the folder which Jenkins will be connected to the machine, and what tasks you tell, it will always try to run by default from this folder. Okay. Now, what is that folder in this machine? So now for that, you can create a separate folder in which you are going to have enough space for you to run your tasks. For example, if you are going to do a build, and practically for doing the build, you need to do the clone and you need to do the compilation and generate the package. So that way, what is the capacity of your workspace, including the compilation? So based on that, you need to have a location which has enough hard disk. For us to practice, what I'll do, I'll just create a folder under temp Jenkins. Okay. So anyway, it just got disconnected. Let me connect back again. So meantime, what I'll do, I'll just give the folder called temp Jenkins. So whenever Jenkins connects to this machine, Jenkins will always go to this folder and it will execute whatever the tasks you have given. Okay. So I'll just create that mkdir temp Jenkins. Okay. So anyway, this is available now. Now, what is the next thing we have to do? Which is what we call it as a label. So in Jenkins, a label is nothing but a group name to which you are associating this particular machine. Because when we do a job configuration, right? So we need to tell on which machine it has to connect. Instead of that, I told you, you can give a group name, right? So that's where that name of the group is nothing but the label. So label indicates a group name which has different machine. So what I'm trying to tell now is create a group with a name called demo. And in that, there is one machine called build machine one. So whenever I refer to demo group, it will be internally referring to a machine called build machine one. Like this, I can add multiple machines put together as one group or one label. Okay. That is what we are going to use further. Now, once you come down, the next thing what you need to know is what is the launch method. Now, this is where, since we are using SSH, we are going to use the last one, which is connect using SSH. So here we need to give the details about that machine. So whenever I say build machine one, what is the actual machine to which it has to connect? That we need to tell. Okay. And that's where, if I go back, first, let's get the IP of this. So I'll say hostname -i. Okay, and I'll give this private IP. And I'll give this. So whenever we say Jenkins connect to this build one or build machine one, then it will use this IP. But to connect to this, you also need the credentials, right? So that's where what we will do is we will use the public key that we have just now generated. Okay, in fact, it's not the public key. Now we are going to use the private key which we have copied. So for this, go back to the master. Okay. Okay, again, it's disconnected. Okay, now go back to the master, and in the master, go to the SSH folder of the same user, which is Ubuntu. Now here, this time, take the private key, which is ID RSA. Okay, so take the content of this file, copy this. All right, and go back to Jenkins. So here, what you do is, okay, let's go back to master now. Yeah, now go back to Jenkins, and in the Jenkins, you should see this add. Click on this and click on Jenkins. Okay, now over here, it will be giving you different types of options that you want to use to connect. Now in this, in the kind, what you do is enable this and try to give SSH username with private key. Okay, because I want Jenkins to connect to the slave machine using SSH, in which I have given the username and the key here. So that way, click on the private key, and here it will ask you what is the username and the key. So that way, just scroll down, and the username is Ubuntu and the key. So what you have to do for the key is click on this enter directly and click on this add, and over here you just copy paste it, whatever you have taken. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm trying to tell Jenkins to connect to this machine using Ubuntu and this private key. Okay, because it is the same RSHA public key I have added to the slave. So that's how when you try to connect to the slave IP using this private key, Jenkins will be automatically able to connect, because there is already a passwordless SSH and the keys are almost the same on master and the slave. Okay, and now you should see this key. So anytime going forward, if you say connect to this machine, Jenkins will go to this IP of the slave and it will use the private key what you have given, and the username is Ubuntu. And here the next option what you should change is change this to manually trusted key verification. Okay, that's all. So you have told how to connect using SSH, and what is the IP, what's the username and private key credential, and how many executors, and what is the remote root directory. Okay, now once you have given everything, then if you come down, this is where, suppose if you have a tool location specific to this machine which is different, then you can come here and click on tool configuration and add tool. And if you see this, only those tools which you have added in the global tool configuration will be visible. So this way, remember, if you want to add a tool location specific to the machine, first you need to add it in the global tool configuration, then you are going to give it here. Okay, so that's the reason you can choose the specific location. For example, if I take this machine, I want this to be available under this location. So you can give something else. I'm just giving you for reference. So whenever Jenkins is connecting to this machine, it will take this specific tool details. But if you have not given anything here, then what you have given in the global tool, the same path or location is what it will take. Okay, so this is where for every machine you are going to give these details, which is tool. If you do not give, it will be a global, and at the same time you need to tell what is the method to connect and what is the IP, username, and the credentials or the key file to connect, and how many parallel executions you can do, and what group is it going to be part of, and what is the remote root directory. Okay. Now,
Sir, Adam sir, there is one issue that we
Yes.
are connected to Wi-Fi. So every time this IP will change, we will not get any static IP regarding that. So every time the IPs of our both the VMs will get changed. So how will this configuration work?
in which place you are telling?
So now you have added
If you
the
are using
IP of,
VM, the IP will not.
sorry.
Yeah, see, in real time, we are creating a VM. This is where you need to make sure more of static IP in which the IP will not change. Okay. So you make sure that is available. But anyway, for your test or practice, we know that if there is going to be a change, then obviously you have to come back and give it. If not, usually when you use even AWS, your private IP will not change. Public IP will change. Okay. But it's our responsibility to make sure Jenkins knows the exact detail. So if you have a machine in which the IPs are changing, then it is something to us where we need to have an elastic IP which doesn't change every time, or it doesn't change even when you reboot. So that's where when we are creating a VM, we need to make sure. But if you're practicing like what we are doing, and tomorrow if you feel that it is getting changed, then once again you have to come back to this location and change the IP to the correct IP, and then Jenkins will be able to connect. Got it?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, so now you can see there is one machine, but it is not yet connected. So what you have to do is go inside and just click on relaunch. It'll just take a few seconds for you to connect. Okay. Let's cross check key correct. Okay, 172.31.36.106 is there. Okay, and move to and host key verification is manually trusted. Okay. Anyway. Fine. Okay, it's again AWS issue. Let's not worry. Yeah, it's taking time to connect. So you can see Jenkins master is trying to connect to the slave machine using SSH, the IP, and other details that you keep, right? So if you just wait for some time, this should get connected. Now going forward, once this machine is connected, we can use Jenkins to define what is that task or the job that we want to execute on this machine. Okay. Now, if you want to add more machines, it's the same process what you're going to do. So quickly what I'll do just to show you another machine. Now you can see there are 2 machines available. If I want to add another machine, same way, I can call it as machine 02. Now in Jenkins, you can copy the configuration from one machine to another machine. So here if I just say copy from build machine 1, okay, so it will copy everything exactly to build machine 2. However, I don't want the same because it's already machine using just giving a wrong, okay, and we'll see. Now we know Jenkins will not connect to it, but if you come back, you can see that there is a group called same demo, and if I go in, there are 2 machines available. So right now it's not connected, so that's the reason it's saying there is no executor available. But if you wait for some time, this machine should be connected, and then we will be able to see Jenkins has 1 machine up and running. However, in the group, there is 1 more machine which is not reachable. Okay. Anyway, now, since most of you guys don't have a slave machine, I just wanted you to see how this is going to get connected. But what we will do now is we can use Jenkins to use the master machine itself to run all the tasks. Okay, but we didn't configure the details for the master because we configured certain things here, right? Now this is where, how do you configure the master machine? Now to configure the master, which is the last one, where we call it as system configuration. So system configuration is nothing but master configuration. Okay. So here, if you go back and now let it connect. Let me give me some more time. Let it be. In the meantime, what we will do, we'll go back to Jenkins. And in the Jenkins, you have once again manage Jenkins. And in the manage Jenkins, go to configure system, the very first option. So this is where you are configuring the master. Okay, so now here you can see that this is the location where Jenkins is installed on this machine, and by default how many executors it is having. So it's having 2. Suppose if you want to change this, this is what you are changing for the master node. Okay, and next, do you want the master machine to be part of any label or a group? Now usually you don't use it because you don't want to associate master to any group. So master should be used as a last resource. So that's the reason we will not add master to any group. Okay, but however, remember this is for the master. Then what is the remote root directory? So by default, when you do not tell any other machine and you are using the Jenkins master itself, then where lib Jenkins becomes the remote root directory for master machine. Okay, so remember, so in your case, wherever you have installed Jenkins, like your D drive or C drive, that will be your remote root directory if you are using master itself directly to run whatever the tasks we want. So if you move down, there are going to be certain other options which we don't need right now. Now, whenever we need, we can come back and add. But if you scroll down and you can see, you will also have the same details like tool, wherein if you have anything specifically to add to master, you can do. But this was an old method to add, because instead of that, on the latest version of Jenkins, if you add it directly to your global tool configuration, that will also be considered as the configuration for master. So that way, right now, there is nothing that I want you to do in your system configuration. But when we have to change later, we will come back. But if not, this is where under the system configuration, to use the master as node, we know how many executors are there, and then your remote root directory will be nothing but where lib Jenkins, if you are using master. But if you are using any other machine, then based on that, we will be having a separate remote root directory, which is temp Jenkins. Okay, so this is what is the basic configuration of Jenkins. Okay, now go ahead and save. So I think, as I said, most of you are using your laptop or a VM. So when you do not have another machine to connect, it's fine. Now assume that you are going to connect to a different machine, but Jenkins is going to connect to the same master by default. Okay, so these are the basic configurations that we need. That is plugins, the tool and node, and after that your system configuration, and then finally what are the different jobs that you're going to create, wherein a job is nothing but a configuration in which you will tell what exactly Jenkins has to do for that, which node it has to connect, and when it has to connect. Okay, now before I move, any questions on the node configuration? Any question?
Adam, hello?
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes.
When will the master pick the job? If then all slaves are busy, only master will pick the job, or else how it will be happen?
No, Jenkins will not pick master unless and until you tell it explicitly. Okay, because look at this diagram. If I tell Jenkins to pick a group of machine, Jenkins will always check whether there is an executor available in this. If there is no executor available, then Jenkins will be waiting for the executor to be available. But while creating a job, if you do not tell any machine, then Jenkins will be taking by default master.
Okay.
Getting the difference?
Yeah, got it.
All right. Okay. Anyone else? Any questions on the group or the node configuration or remote root directory executor? Is that clear? So if I come back, you should see in my case now, this machine is connected. It was slow, but it is okay. But do you see? I have 3 machines altogether. One is the default master, and I have 2 machines that we added. In that, one is connected and one is not connected. However, both of them are part of a group called demo. So now if I refer to group called demo, it will point to both the machines, but out of that, only one machine is connected. So I don't have to worry about it. So all I will tell Jenkins is use this group called demo, and whichever machine has the executor, Jenkins will connect to that directly. Getting it? Got that? So remember, Jenkins will not connect to master directly. If you have not told any nodes, then by default it will pick the master. Okay. All right. So now let's go back to the jobs. Okay, so before that, do you guys need a quick 5 minutes break? Because anyway, we just left with an hour. No, Chinmay, that is what I'm explaining to you. If you do not tell a job where to run, then by default, it will take the master machine. Okay, fine. So my question now is, do you guys need a quick 5 minutes break, or is it okay that we can continue?
You can take a break.
Okay. I'm not hearing from others. Anyway, I just heard 2 people saying it. Yeah, go on a break. I think it's already 11:07. Let's take a small break. Okay, a quick 5 minutes break, and then talk to you guys again. Okay, because anyway, remaining we have another 40 minutes. So probably when we do practice, you'll also get a break. So for today, we'll just take a small break and come back. Yeah, I'll be on mute. Please take a break and be back by 5 minutes. Is everyone back?
Yes.
Okay, what about others? All right, great. Yeah, so now just to continue, so we now have the plugin configured, the tools configured, again, bare minimum. We have a group of machines configured, okay? So if you go back to your Jenkins homepage, if you scroll down, you should be seeing those details. You can see right now in this Jenkins, we have 3 machines. One is master, which has 2 nodes, and we have 1 build machine with 1 node, and you have another build machines which is offline. Because of that, there is no threads or executors available. So that's how, using the Jenkins homepage, you can also see what and all are the jobs running and where it is running. So that's where I was telling you in the advantage yesterday that Jenkins acts as a dashboard where you can see everything from one page. Now, however, we don't have any job created as of now, okay? So what we are going to do now is create a job. So to create a job, go to this left side option and click on this new item. Okay. Now give a name here. So let me just call it as first job. Okay, you can give any name. Again, this is for the job to be appearing on the dashboard. And then we have different types of jobs which are available here. So for now, to get familiarized with what do you mean by a job, so let's choose a type called as freestyle. And as the name says, freestyle, this has everything not configured, whereas you get all the options available based on what plugins you have installed. And it's up to us to configure what exactly this job has to do. So that's where it means freestyle. So choose freestyle. Okay, and go on, click OK. Now, anytime if you take a freestyle job, so you have the options in which there is a general tab, and then there is a SEM tab, okay, and then there is something called as build trigger, and then there is something called as build environment, and then you have build and post build. Okay, so what are these options used for? So that's we'll understand and we'll explore one by one deeper. So generally, the first section, which is general section, gives a common details about how this job should be executing. And in that, the most important one, what you're going to use is where to run. Because if you go back here, I was telling you in a job, 3 things needed is when to run, what to run, and where to run, right? So that way, where should it run? That is what you are going to give here. Okay. Now in that, if you come down, you should see an option called restrict where this project can be executed. So if you enable this, now if you give a machine, then Jenkins will be running against that machine. But if you do not give this, then Jenkins will run it on the master. Okay, so that's where, what is that you're going to give? So for those who have created a machine, then we can add that, or this is where you can give the machine name. So now by giving this machine name, Jenkins will directly run in this machine only if there is an executor available. If not, you can go ahead and give a group name or a label, but as soon as you give this, you can see it clearly indicates this machine or this label has 2 machines, and in that, if there is an executor available, that is what it is going to assign to this job to execute. Okay. Now, in case if you do not give this, then Jenkins will be running this job directly on the master. Okay, so that's how you're going to tell where this job should be running. And once again, when you give a group, whatever machine has the thread, Jenkins will be connecting to it. Okay. Now, we have a couple of other options, but we will try to see one by one. Now, what is SCM tab? Now, in case if you want Jenkins to connect to any version controlling system like Git or SVN, then you have to give this option. So you're going to use it. Suppose if you're trying to do a nightly build or a PI build, that time we need, but right now we don't need it. But next option, what is build trigger? So build trigger is nothing but where you want to run as general, whereas when do you want to run? That is what you're going to tell it using build triggers. Okay. So in this, we told you when to run, right? So that part of when to run is what you are going to use the build triggers. Now, wherein we will see what are the different options available. Then the other important thing is build. So the build tab represents what do you want to run, which is this one. Okay. So this part is what we mean it as build. But why do we call it as build? Because Jenkins was first created to run or support only builds like CI build or nightly build. That is where using Jenkins, whenever you see an option called build, you need to understand this is the tab where you are going to tell what is this job going to run. Okay. And suppose after completing this task, if you have a last task that you want to run after executing this step, then you are going to put it under post build action. Okay. So as of now, these are the different options we have, and supporting this task that you want to run, if there is some kind of environment that you want to set to run, then you will be using this build environment. Okay. So which I'll show you when to use. So for now, let's take a simple example on what is that I'm trying to do and how do I automate the same thing using my Jenkins job. Now, assume this is my node machine. Okay. Now, in this node machine, if I want to run a simple command, okay, so what do? You connect to this machine, and then in that console, you type whatever the command you want. Now, instead of that, if you want Jenkins to connect to this machine and run some command. Now, let's say, for example, all I want to do is just type the command called hi Adam. Okay. So for this, what did I do? I connected to this machine using SSH in this console. I went into this machine and then I ran this command and it displayed it. Now the equivalent of that, wherein instead of me connecting to this machine, I can ask Jenkins to do. So for that, first, you're going to the general tab, and in this, I'm trying to tell use the machine or the group. Okay, so I'm saying demo. So again, internally demo has 2 machines, but out of that only 1 machine is available and 1 executor. So whenever I run this job, it will always run on build machine 1. Okay, then let's come to the build step. So what is that you want to run? So basically, I'm not trying to run an application here, but I am trying to connect to the machine and run some OS command. So for that, if you click on build step, so you will see something called as execute shell. This is because I'm trying to connect to a Linux box, and in Linux, what kind of command prompt you will get? You will be getting a shell, which could be like a bash shell or a bound shell. But by default, what you're going to get is a bash shell. So the similar or equivalent of what you have opened a screen or a console and whatever that you have typed, the equivalent of that is what you are telling Jenkins to put here. Okay, so whatever the command that you wanted to run, the same thing you can also tell it here. Okay, and now when you run this job, Jenkins will connect to the machine what you have given, and in that it will open a command prompt or a shell, and then it will execute whatever commands that you have given. Okay, now for that, let me first apply once again. When I say apply, it will save and remain. What we have told in the job is which machine to connect, what to run, but we haven't told when to run, because for a job we need 3 things, right? Where to run, what to run, and when to run. Now this is when, if you want a job to run based on some condition, then you can use build trigger. If not, what you can do is you can run a job on need basis. On need basis means whenever you want, you can run the job. For example, I want to run the job now. So how do you run it? So that's where you can save this, and you can see it will take you to the configuration of the job. Okay, now here on the left hand side you see an option called configure. So every time when you click on this configure, it will take you back to the same configuration page. And suppose if you want to delete this project, you can just click on this and this job will be deleted. If not, if you go back to your dashboard, you should see the job available. Okay, now this is that job we created. So if you click on this, you will go back to the same place where you can configure it or you can delete it. However, if you want to run this job now or execute this job, then only when you click on this build now, it will execute. This is because we have not configured the job to tell when it has to run. So that way, the only possibility for this job to run now is to click on this option called build now. So this is when you are executing the job on need basis. Okay, so when I click on this build now, what will happen? You can see there is a first execution of this job, which is what we call it as build history. Build means how many times it is running. So whatever you have told Jenkins as, all right. So now every time when you run a job, what will Jenkins do? You will be able to see the history. Okay. Now this is where, like I told you, if I close the screen here, okay, then what will happen? All these details will go away. Whereas yesterday I was telling you this, Jenkins keep a history of everything that you are running. So that's where every time when Jenkins runs your job, the history will be maintained. And if you want to look at the output, you can click on this and it will show you the console output wherein you can see what Jenkins has done. It has executed the command what you have given, and where it has run on the demo group, the machine that is available is demo, which is nothing but the build machine 1, and in that it has executed this task, okay, which is the equivalent of you connecting to this machine and running. Instead of that, you have executed the Jenkins job, and Jenkins has connected to this machine available based on the group, and it has executed. Okay, so this way, what you can do, whenever you want, you can configure the Jenkins job to run, or you can run it on need basis, and Jenkins will connect to that machine and it will run. Okay, now this is when you have configured where to run. Suppose if I go back to the job, configure, and here if I come down, and if I do not tell where to run, this is what you guys are going to do in case if you have installed Jenkins laptop directly. Okay, and if you do not have any machine, then two things you are going to do. First is you are not going to give where to run, and the next thing what you are going to change here is in the build, if your Windows machine is what master machine is about, then this will not work. So instead of the execute shell, what you are going to do is you are going to use execute Windows bash command, which is equivalent of this, which is CMD. So on Windows, how do you do? You open Windows command prompt, and here you will be running Adam. Okay, so this is what you are going to do on your Windows. So that's the reason the equivalent of this is you are going to create a Windows bash command prompt, and in this you are going to give the same command whatever you are trying. Okay, whatever I'm going to do will be on a execute shell because I'm connecting to a Linux box in AWS. But for you, you don't have a Linux box and you're using your own laptop to install Jenkins. So, and that way, if that is a Windows machine, then you're going to execute it using Windows bash command. If not, if you have installed Jenkins on a Linux box, then you want to run it directly on that, then you can use this. Okay. What we have done, if you see here, I have not given the restrict where to run, and since they are not given where to run, Jenkins will run on the master by default. Okay, so let me just show you. So I'll go ahead and save this. And now, if I go ahead and click on build now, you should see there is a second execution of the job available. Okay, and in this, if you just go inside the console log, you should now see instead of picking up the build machine, Jenkins would have master. This is because you have not told where to run, and that's where Jenkins, for the second execution, it has taken the master machine. Okay, and in that it has executed this. So this is how, based on which machine that you tell, Jenkins will be executing the job. So for that, you can tell a machine or a group, and if you do not give anything, Jenkins will be directly running on the master. Okay, so for those who are using Jenkins master directly, and if it is a Windows, then use this method. And for those, if you're using Jenkins on a VM, which is Linux based, then on the job, okay, just to show you, configure, and you are going to leave it as it is because you don't have any machine. But if your master machine is a Linux machine, then you are going to use this execute shell. Suppose if your master machine is a Windows machine, then you click on this add step and choose Windows bash command and give the same command. Okay, so that's the only difference. But are you able to get the difference on how Jenkins runs a job specifically? So if I do not give which machine, then Jenkins is going to run on the master. But once again, if I give a group, then in that group, whatever machine is available, in that the executors which is free, on that it will be running. So in our case, there is only one machine which is build machine 1, because build machine 2 is not at all available. So that's the reason. If I run it again, watch this. If I go back, I've just opened it in 2 tabs. So now if I run, the third execution of Jenkins is going to happen once again on build machine 1, because this is the machine which is available in the demo group, and you can see it is getting executed. Okay, so as of now, we have told where to run and what to run, but to execute the job, I'm telling when to run on need basis. So that is where under the job we are using build now. So we will see the other options as we move along. But at the same time, you can see the other benefit of Jenkins is you have all the history available, right? Because anytime if I want, I can go back and look at what happened, at what time it happened, and where did it run. Now this will not be available if you're trying to do it manually. So Jenkins keep a history. And in this, you can in fact run multiple commands also. So for example, here, it's not just one command. I can also run multiple commands, and all of them will be executed in sequence. Okay, the same way like how you do it manually, Jenkins will run all these things one by one in sequence. So just watch this. I'll say apply, and I go back. And if I click on build now, and you should get a 4th execution. Now this should happen on, once again, build machine 1, because that's the only machine available in the group. And in this, it is executing all the 3 commands one by one. So what command to run is completely up to us. But as of now, what we have seen is how you are telling Jenkins on what it has to run and where it has to run. And in that, we are trying to tell Jenkins to run this job whenever we need by clicking on this build now option. Okay, so this is a simple way where you understand it basically. Now, before we move further, can you quickly try this once and try to set up a job and see how Jenkins is connecting to a machine and how it is running this? Can everyone quickly try this? Hey, everyone tried it once? Hello. Hey, has everyone tried it once or anyone facing any difficulties? What about others other than Silva, Chicken? I'm not able to get answers from others. Okay, guys, I would really appreciate if we get response. If not, it will be difficult to know what level you are. Okay. Now, since I didn't get any update, I assume that all of you have tried it. Okay, so let me just move on to the next one. So what I showed you now here is how do you specify a Jenkins job on where to run, and in that what to run is what you have given. And in that we saw an option where if you want to run a job on need basis, you're going to just typically click on build now. Okay, so let's explore a little more options in this. But for today, what I want you to try is when you're trying to execute a task. Okay, now for example, here, so what you have told in this is just to run some echo command. Okay, but what if you want to create a file? Okay, now assume I'm just trying to run a command called touch a file called dummy file. Okay, now I'm going to apply and run it. So when I'm running this job, so where will Jenkins connect? So basically Jenkins will connect depending on what machine I have given here. And in that machine, it will try to create this file. But where will it create the file? That is the question. Okay. Any guess on where this file will be created? Anyone?
The workspace which you have added.
Not the workspace. It is on the remote root directory, because do you remember that in a job or a machine, we told that what is remote root directory, correct? So remote root directory is the location where Jenkins always connects, and whatever that commands that you're giving or the steps that you're giving, it'll execute it in that folder. But let's look back. Okay, so let me go back to executing the job. I've saved it. Okay, now if I click on build now, so it has executed this, but let me go ahead and check. So if you see, this file called dummy file is being executed, or all this commands is being executed from the remote root directory, which is temp Jenkins. But however, inside this, what Jenkins does is creates one more folder called workspace. And inside that, it is going to create a folder with the name of your job. And this is the location where Jenkins will be exactly running your tasks. This is because when more than one job is using the same machine, then all the commands, if it runs on the same folder, it would be causing confusion. Instead of that, what Jenkins will do is for each and every job, it will create a folder under workspace in the temp, which is the remote root directory, with the name of the job, and whatever that you're running will be under this. So this is how for every job execution, there will be a unique workspace. Okay. And as we move forward, tomorrow, if I'm trying to do a clone for build, then that will also be available under this location. Okay. So now if I go to this machine and if I go to this temp Jenkins workspace first job folder, I'll be able to see that the dummy file is created. Okay. However, without we going inside, sometimes the person who is running the job will be different, and there will be another person who wants to access. So that's where it is not mandatory that you should always allow the person to go to this machine. Instead, if you come back to Jenkins, the workspace, what you see here or here is the path to the remote root directory folder, which Jenkins has used for the recent execution of the job. So now if you click on this, it will directly show you that remote root directory workspace, the first job folder. So inside that, whatever you have is what you are directly trying to access from this workspace. So this is how Jenkins also gives you a flexibility where a user doesn't have to connect to a machine to see something or debug. Instead, using this workspace option, Jenkins can allow a user directly to check the contents of the job, which is what manually, if you're doing, you might have to, go to this machine. Okay, let me connect it again. So I have to connect to this machine and then go to that folder, which is temp Jenkins, or the remote root directory, and inside this workspace, and then specific folder with the name of the job. Okay. So let me just show you. Okay, let me connect to it. So now if I go to temp Jenkins, and inside that there is a workspace created, and inside that the first name, which is nothing but first job. And this is where this file is available. Okay, so that's where, remember, when you run Jenkins, it always goes to the remote root directory. And suppose for those who are using the master machine, then instead of going to this temp Jenkins, wherever you have installed the Jenkins, it will go to that folder, and in that it will create a workspace and the name of the job. And inside this folder, it will be running. So that way, remember, whatever you are running in Jenkins, it runs on the particular machine depending on which label or the machine that you have given. And in that, it will be running all the steps under remote root directory workspace and a folder with the name of your job. Okay, so remember, these are the basics. So can you just try running this once and see where it is getting created, whether you are using a different machine or a master. So if you are using master, then if you come back, I think, let me show you this execution. So here you can see on the second execution, I have used the master. So at that time, my master is installed on wherelib Jenkins. So because of that, the remote root directory for my master is wherelib Jenkins, and inside that it creates a workspace and a folder with the name of the job. And in this, it will be trying to run all the other stacks. Okay. Jenkins picks up a folder, and this will be the default folder in which all the tasks that you're giving will be executed. Okay. So can you quickly try running this by adding a new step and check where exactly it is running and where exactly it is creating this file, and how you are able to access the workspace folder directly from the Jenkins job, which is nothing but here. Go to this job and you should see this workspace, which will lead you to the folder which it has used for the recent job execution. Okay. Can you try this?
Adam, can we get this recording?
Yeah, you should be able to get that. Yeah, just talk to your training department. They can help you with this.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Has everyone tried it once? Okay, so everyone is clear with the basics, what we have seen. So what is configuration? And in the job, what is that we are going to specify on where to run and typically what to run. And in the when to run, we have just seen only the first option on specifying on need basis. Okay, so tomorrow we'll get in deeper into this and we'll be able to explore more, because this is more of the basics to understand why do we need Jenkins for. Okay, so you can use it for executing any kind of automation. So all we need to know is what are the things you have to tell, when to run, where to run, and what to run. Okay, so in that, is everyone clear with what we have seen today? Yes, no, maybe. Clear so far? All right, perfect. Yeah, so for the first 1 hour that we didn't had, probably let's see if we can extend any of the day. Okay, or at the last day, we can have 1 more hour and we can try to go through all the remaining things and to go for. Okay, sure. But remember, from tomorrow, I want more interaction, because there's more about basics we completed, but from tomorrow I'll be getting in more explanations, and I want you to get more hands-on, do this practice, and unless and until you don't come back with problems, I have to assume that everything is good. Okay, but again, please talk to your management and try to get alternate machines for you so that it's easy for practicing. If not, beyond Jenkins, when we are trying with Docker and Kubernetes, it will be very difficult. Okay, anyway, thanks for the time, and I apologize for the first almost 45 minutes which we wasted. All right, anyway, thank you guys. It was a nice session. I'll talk to you tomorrow same time. Yep, have a good day. Hey, thank you. Have a good day.